Welcome back to the Caregivers Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Ropeleski, but you can call me Dr. Mark. Caregiving's changing, not because the work's easier and not because the systems suddenly fix themselves. God knows that's not the case, but because caregivers are reaching a limit and they're finally naming it. For decades, we told caregivers to be more resilient, more grateful even, more selfless. We celebrated endurance and we rewarded sacrifice. And quietly, we just sort of watched people lose their health, their lives, their relationships, and sometimes their sense of who they were and the vocation that they chose to begin with. What's becoming clear now is this. Burnout isn't a personal failure. I think we've emphasized that. It's often actually a pretty predictable response to prolonged moral injury, unresolved trauma, and systems that demand empathy without protection. In 2026, caregiving is no longer about just giving more. It's going to have to be about giving differently. Caregivers are learning that boundaries aren't selfish. They're stabilizing, actually, and that energy matters more than ever. That rest is not a reward, but a maintenance strategy, maintenance for that engine, and that you can care deeply without disappearing in the process. We're also seeing a shift away from the big hero narrative stories towards maybe a little bit more honest ones. Stories that say, looking back, I was strong and it cost me. Stories that now actually finally make room for repair. Today's episode is about what's in and what's out for caregivers in 2026. Not trends, not buzzwords, but real shifts that determine whether caregivers survive this work or are quietly consumed by it. If you care for others, professionally or personally, this conversation's for you. If there's anything you think we've missed, leave us a comment. Tell us what your ins and outs for this year are. And thanks for joining us today. Enjoy the show. What's in for 2026? Shifting the focus towards sustainability, protection, and strategy. Number one, boundaries as a clinical skill. The big shift here is that boundaries aren't selfish. They're actually protective infrastructure for clinicians, parents, partners, and advocates. The practice at hand is now going to be setting boundaries as a skill that we actually can practice repeatedly and master. There's that fine balance between being lost and maintaining this actual semblance of yourself. So the goal of separating that overload from the manageable, separating self-care from draining selflessness. It's the ability to show up the next day and set up the conditions that actually allow you to do so. Number two, energy management over time management. The concept here is that it's not about finding more hours, but actually more about nervous system regulation, sleep protection, cognitive load reduction. The truth is that time follows energy. And if you create the energy, you'll see how much more time is left for you to dedicate and to choose. Without the energy, time management will fail. Multitasking will fail as well. Number three, peer support over guru culture. Caregivers trust each other because of their shared lived experiences. And that goes a lot further than just having a voice and perfect credentials. Prioritizing conversation together in shared environments, comparing reactions to shared experiences, carry the conversation a lot further than just listening to preaching. Number four, financial literacy can become self-care too. Moving money conversations away from shame towards strategy, building new small skill sets, new habits when it comes to finances, maybe even actually revisiting the conversation among partners when we get to that point where caregiving may actually be off not too far away for one of us, or it actually may appear overnight in an aging parent. So maybe actually we need to think of things a bit differently. Maybe it's not just death and taxes are guaranteed, but death, taxes, caregiving, and the need to be cared for. And maybe that's why caregiving and financial literacy need to blend a little bit more. Starting to understand cash flow, reducing decision fatigue where we can, and recognizing that long-term stability financially can also create some emotional safety in the process. Number five, selective empathy. That's empathy with limits. Empathy serves others, and sometimes it also serves caregivers as well. However, we can sometimes get ourselves into a bit of trap. Compassion has to be without self-abandonment. This is pretty new, and it's actually overdue. Number 6 is short-form, high-yield self-care. 5 to 20-minute practices that fit real-life moments in our real lives are really a lot more important than never having the time to fit in a 2-hour event or a 2-hour workout or a 2-hour exercise. Micro walks, micro breath work, micro moments, brief strength training, and reflective journaling, where in a moment we can change our path and our trajectory for the day. Number 7, low noise lives. Intentionally reducing social media, news overload, performance productivity, and that constant urgency that you need to get everything done immediately without prioritizing what really needs to be done with urgency and what can wait. Less stimulation and more clarity. Number 8, moral injury as the dominant framework. Replacing burnout with this more deep understanding that you're not weak. You were put in an impossible system, and that's why you feel the way you do. You're not weak, and you have nothing to be ashamed about. A massive shift in how we view caregiver stress is in the offing, and we need to embrace it. Number 9, narrative repair. Reclaiming that story you tell yourself as a caregiver. Restating that I didn't fail. I survived and I did pretty well. Accepting that even if a specific task failed, it doesn't mean you're horrible at it or you're bad at it. It means also understanding the difference between some of the guilt when something doesn't go so well and some of the shame that can arise where you just start saying that you're bad at everything and there's no room for good anymore or you won't get better. Number 10, strength-based aging. Realizing that your body and your health is actually an asset not only during your caregiving journey, but also afterwards. There's a life that also awaits that may take on a different path and a different tack once your caregiving journey is over. But without realizing that your body needs to be invested in throughout and leaving it only as an afterthought, you may run into some pretty big trouble. Longevity thinking actually starts a lot earlier in the caregiving journey so that there can be longevity in your partnership and longevity for yourself when your caregiving journey is over. Don't neglect yourself while you're caring for others. Find the micro moments to build some strength. Keep the muscle bulk. Doesn't take as much as you actually think. Now what you've really been waiting for, what's out for 2026? Let's leaving behind the narratives that no longer serve the caregiver at all. Number 1, just practice better self-care. Without addressing trauma, systems, real-world constraints, this is just gaslighting. We're moving past advice that ignores the environment you're working in. We're leaving that behind. Number 2, hero narratives. The pressure of being the strong one all the time and at all costs. That story doesn't make people better. It actually breaks them. Number 3, toxic empathy. That feeling of your ability and your need to feel everything for everyone else while neglecting and maybe even destroying yourself quietly by leaving so many parts of you unaddressed. We are choosing preservation over total emotional absorption in 2026. Number 4, productivity worship. The lie that doing more always equals living better. That's not the case. We actually need to pick what means the most, and doing more of what means the most actually leads to living better. This year, we select purpose over the need to multitask every second of the day. Number 5, one-size-fits-all wellness. Recognizing that what works for a 25-year-old influencer does not work for a 48-year-old ICU nurse or a parent caregiver or a senior caregiver. Wellness needs to be contextual. It's not rubber stamped. It doesn't just get taken from far away and with the pressures of that brought into your realm and then suddenly you judge yourself. No, it's personalized and it's not one size fits all. Number 6, shame-based motivation. Let's move away from phrases in 2026 that say you should be grateful. You signed up for this. That narrative's done. Period. Number 7, sacrifice as virtue. We all need to be virtuous. We all want to be virtuous, but caregivers need to start rejecting the idea that your level of suffering ultimately proves your worth to others and your own self-worth You do not need to suffer to be good at what you do. Number 8, ignoring the body. So much has been written about the messages your body can tell you and the information that's stored in your body. Mental health can no longer be divorced from the sleep, nutrition, strength, and the hormonal milieu that fuels the fight or flight response that some people experience in every moment of the day. That split is collapsing in favor of a whole body approach. Number 9, saving everyone in every moment. Recognizing that as a caregiver, you're not responsible for outcomes that you have no chance of controlling today or ever. And number 10, what's out in 2026? Waiting for permission to rest. Caregivers are no longer asking for a green light to take a break. Rest is a requirement, not a reward. It's something you should actually seek out and maybe strategize for. If you're really trying to be the best caregiver you can, turning towards resources that are available, speaking to others to find out how you can get some respite might be the best investment in yourself and in the person you love and care for. And finally, silence. Silence is out in 2026. The era of keeping the struggle of caregiving simply quiet is over. Whether it's through podcasts, blogs, newsletters, people are finally speaking publicly, honestly, humanly. And because they're speaking humanly, they're speaking imperfectly. And from that, we have a lot to learn and a lot to reflect on. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found this roundup interesting. It was certainly kind of cool to think about it and come up with it. If you're listening and you find that there's someone else who could benefit from thinking about these ins and outs, do share this episode with them. But also, if you think there's something missing, leave us a comment. We want to hear what you have to say. We want your thoughts to shape future episodes. We're here to listen, to share, and to build with you. We'll see you again next time at the Caregivers Podcast. That wraps up this week's episode. See you soon. Before we wrap up, I wanted to remind you of something important. The conversations you hear on this podcast are here to inform, to support, to spark reflection. They're not a substitute for professional medical advice, care, therapy, or crisis services. Listening to this podcast does not create a doctor-patient or caregiver-client relationship between us. If you're facing a medical concern, health challenge, a mental health challenge, or a caregiving situation that needs guidance, I encourage you to reach out to a qualified professional who knows your story. If you're ever in crisis, please don't wait. Call your local emergency number or recognize crisis hotline right away. You deserve real-time help and support. The views you hear on this show, whether from me or my guests, are our own. They don't necessarily reflect any organizations we work with, or are part of, or have worked with, or been part of in the past. This podcast is an independent production. It's not tied to any hospital, university, or healthcare system. Thank you for being here, for listening, and most of all, for taking the time to care for yourself while you continue to care for others. I look forward to hearing from you.